ruled out aliens or extraterrestrials, and if so, why?
I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point.
Are we being invaded? Joining me now, the great Liz Wheeler of Liz Wheeler Show, which you can watch right here on The First, Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Liz, all right, I don't think we're being invaded by aliens, but it does seem like we went from allowing one balloon across the country to shooting something out of the sky every 15 minutes. What exactly is the Liz Wheeler take on this stuff?
I think there's a single word that can be used to describe why we're shooting so much stuff out of the sky, and that is incompetence. The Biden administration was humiliated by the Chinese spy balloons, so they ramped up their radars. They started looking closely at what is encroaching on our sovereign airspace, and now they're just shooting willy-nilly. There's actually a video, this is from like 2 or 3 years ago, before Biden was president, where he was coming out against AR-15s. He was saying, listen, even if you have a home invader, you don't need an AR-15. And he literally advised people in this video to just go out on your porch and aim a double-barreled shotgun in the sky and give it a couple blasts, and that'll scare away any home invader. That is what Joe Biden is doing right now. He is indiscriminately shooting things out of the sky to cover for the humiliating thing that every American witness. Jesse, he thought we wouldn't notice this. That's the thing. The Biden administration was aware of this Chinese spy balloon before it even touched Alaska. They thought the American people would just be going about their lives, not notice this until someone happened to look up in the sky. A journalist who I think was prior military, so had some experience in this kind of aircraft, took a picture of it. It went viral on social media thanks to citizen journalism, and the Biden administration froze. They didn't know what to do because they didn't want to be antagonistic to the Chinese Communist Party. But at the same time, all the American people were like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? This is our country, our safety, and you are taking the side of the Chinese.
Liz, the Rear Admiral Pete Buttigieg was talking about this, and it just seems so unserious. Here's what he said.
It's had its challenges.
Right.
I mean, if you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Mm-hmm. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
Liz, none of these people seem to be mindful about the country. That's what I take from all this stuff so much. You have these huge incidents, and it's all just kind of an inconvenience. Oh, dang, there are problems. I'm busy trying to run for president here. There's really not a patriotic bone in these people's body, is there?
Only elitists would laugh at the things that he was laughing at, things that have hurt the American people, the shipping container crisis, the threat to our national sovereignty. The food crisis, the airline tickets, the cancellations, these are things that have negatively impacted and harmed the American people. Pete Buttigieg is laughing because he is an elitist. He is not touched by any of these things. He's special. He's set above the rest. He plays by different rules than you or I do. The infuriating part is that this man, Pete Buttigieg, was hired because he's gay, period. He was hired because he fits the token virtue signaling of the left. They want us to think that Pete Buttigieg is qualified because of who he likes to sleep with, because of what his sexual orientation is. I'm sorry to say that is not a qualifier for a position like this. Prior to Pete Buttigieg being Secretary Pete, when he was Mayor Pete, his biggest accomplishment was like a bike lane in the small town that he lived in. That does not qualify someone to serve in a cabinet position and in a presidential administration, and we see that. This is a diversity hire, right? This is someone who was hired based on an immutable characteristic and lifestyle choice, and the result of this has been harm to the American people. The fact that the Biden administration didn't fire him after the first time he faced a problem and failed, that he chose to let the American people be harmed versus actually deferring to people who might know better than he does or resigning, shows you that the Biden administration values political identity politics more than they value us.
I'm glad you said something about diversity and him being a diversity hire, which he obviously is. Old Mayor Pete brought it up today.
To work with your contractors, to work with your community colleges on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level.
Liz, I call diversity the death of everything because that's honestly what it is. From pilots to surgeons to government to construction workers, we focus on, as you pointed out, lifestyle choices and other idiotic things, and it's slowly killing the entire country.
It's terrible. I mean, Pete Buttigieg, it's phenomenal to me. Let's back up for a second. It's phenomenal to me that there's not one enterprising journalist in this country who's interested in asking Pete Buttigieg whether he shares the ideological affinity of his father. Pete Buttigieg's father is a man named Joseph Buttigieg, who ran an international fan club for Antonio Gramsci, who was a committed Marxist, a cultural Marxist. And no one has even ever asked. I mean, Joseph Buttigieg translated Antonio Gramsci from Italian into English. The reason that we see the cultural onslaught of Marxism in our country is because Joseph Buttigieg translated Antonio Gramsci. No one's ever bothered to ask Pete Buttigieg, well, do you share the communist views of your father? Do you share the Marxist ideology? Is that what you're trying to push on our country? Now, Jesse, to you and I, the answer might be obvious. Of course he is, because what he's doing is he's engaging in racism. He's engaging in racism not because he believes that he's inferior as a white person, not because he believes that a black person is inferior, but because he's using racialism as his cudgel. He's using that as the tool to try to spark Marxist revolution. He's engaging in the same critical race theory stuff, nonsense, garbage that we've seen pollute our entire society. He's a gross human being, really. I don't say that about his soul, but I say that about all his behaviors, all his ideologies, and everything, all of the impact of all of his actions on the American people. He's one of the worst in the Biden administration.
I didn't see it, but from what I understand, some organization called He Gets Us ran some supposedly Christian commercial. Anyway, here it was.
Maybe I'm foolish, maybe I'm blind, thinking I can see through this and see what's behind. Got no way to prove it, so maybe I'm lying. Take a look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see it clearer, or are you deceived in what you believe? 'Cause I'm only human after all.
All right, well, whatever you think about the commercial itself, I thought the response to it was interesting from both sides. People like AOC complaining about the commercial, many Democrats publicly complaining that that commercial even aired. And then, of course, the right, I saw a lot of this from the right, Liz, saying, I don't understand why they're so mad. I don't understand. What's your problem with it? Why does the right have such a very difficult time acknowledging that the left has declared war on the American church? It's an open war. They're quite honest about it. And yet the right won't accept this, Liz. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's actually the reason that we are facing the challenges that we're facing in our country today, because for the past several decades, almost 50 years now, Republicans have been squishes. Republicans have refused to acknowledge the reality of the political enemy that we're facing, communists and Marxists, and as a result, we haven't fought well back against them. And if you don't fight well, you don't win. And every cultural example of this that we see now, I mean, think about the Grammys, what was that, a week or two ago, where Sam Smith was cavorting about the stage dressed as Satan, surrounded by by demons. I mean, every indication of our culture, every example of our culture is an indication that we have lost the culture war. The reason for that is because Republicans refuse to acknowledge the political enemy that we face and also the spiritual enemy that we face. The spiritual enemy is intricately intertwined with the political enemy. And I know people are going to say, oh, Liz, stop preaching, stop bringing religion into it. You have to, Jesse. You can't disassociate. You can't divorce morality from the author of morality. There's no such thing as secular morality. There's no such thing as secular ethics. And when you try to set up a system where mankind determines what's right and what's wrong, what you get is wokeism. What you get is communism. What you get is a set of changing standards that are based not in truth but in political whim. I personally didn't like that ad because I think it's not only unbiblical, it's anti-biblical. The tagline on it was Jesus loved everyone we hate, and it's true. Jesus loves everyone and perhaps loves people that we don't love, but he doesn't love all of our actions. And that advertisement was conflating people with their actions. Anybody who's opened their Bible understands that Jesus specifically calls us to behave in a way that's following him, that's honoring him, that is worshipful of him, and he doesn't condone our sin. But what that ad did was make it seem like everyone's actions is part of their identity, part of what God loves. And as I said, that's not just unbiblical and inaccurate, it's actually anti-biblical, and I would argue pretty harmful.
Liz Wheeler, The Liz Wheeler Show. Thank you, Liz.
Support the First TV today and get instant access to exclusive specials like Who is Ron DeSantis, the history of FBI scandals, and America's worst presidents. Visit thefirsttv.com/support or download the First TV app to become a supporter and start watching today.